My name's Sasha Pete, and I'm joined by a fantastic individual, none other than the great Eric Vassiliadis. Welcome, Eric, a fellow George Cross coach, and congratulations on your championship win in 2022.
Thank you, Sasha. Great to be here, mate. And it's lovely to see that your ethnicity allowed you to pronounce my surname just perfectly.
That's right. So the mother's Hellenic. So she tried to teach me well. So tell us, Eric, how did you fall in love with our great game?
Probably like most young boys. Well, maybe not most, but a lot of young boys. One of three brothers, and my middle brother was this kind of 4 years older than me, and I just followed him across the ground, just watching him play. But funny story is that my father didn't want to have too many sons playing soccer. So he had one playing soccer. He wanted me to be a bouzouki player. So he just would not let me play soccer. He said, no, one's enough. And I think after a few weeks where I'd go and watch my brother play and just sort of kick the ball before the game or at halftime, some of the fathers said, hey, you should let this boy play soccer as well. And reluctantly, I started playing soccer. So I fell in love basically following my brother.
That's fantastic. And so
Liverpool, Barcelona, Heidelberg, Carlton, all through my brother.
Fantastic. I mean, the emulation of an older brother is something that's so that competition, 4 years is a big jump, right? Like physically, but wanting to compete, that wanting to compete within the family unit is a synonymous story with many sort of second or third borns. So did you ever? But more important question: did you ever pick up the bouzouki?
No, but I regret it, mate, because I reckon I would have done okay with the bouzouki. Do you know what I mean? So no, unfortunately, my parents are shattered still.
And so, Eric, when I remember you play, and still when I play, I don't know if you remember, like a couple of years ago, I tried to mark you in a coaches versus coaches game. You're still quality on the ball.
Thank you.
But when I remember, always comfortable on the ball, creative. You always were looking to play forward. Always that box to box. Did you grow up as a junior in that mold, or where did you start playing as a junior when you first started playing?
Oh, mate, look, good question. I'll start off by saying that I started off as a midfielder, and as I got progressively older, I went further and further back. So definitely a midfielder. And I think what helped me as a young player endear myself to my teammates, to my club, to my coaches, is that I could just score goals from distance. And when you're young and all you've got to do is just put it about like 30 centimetres above the goalkeeper's head and it's a goal. And suddenly I found myself just playing in these midfield roles, taking all the free kicks, all the corners, just because I could kick the furthest. So funny enough, I now play over 35s and I'm just doing the same thing. So it's one big cycle, right? I'm just trying to kick the furthest. So I'm dinking keepers from 40 yards because the poor guys can't get back fast enough, right? So.
And I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen. So if anyone wants to poach Eric for an over 35s or over 45s, you're 40, you're 46, 47 now.
47. I think I'm 48 this year, man. But yeah,
48. You look great.
Oh, thank you.
So
do you.
Compliments all around. So where did you first gravitate? What was your local junior club? So what was the first one?
I genuinely followed my brother. He played for Heidelberg. My dad being a very proud Greek sort of person. Heidelberg, given we're from the north part of Greece, is kind of where we resonated. And I just fell in love with that place from day one because, look, these days the A-League's become more geographical, right? If you're sort of from the West, you follow Western United. As you would remember, the NSL was more about ethnicities, right? If you were this part of Greece, you followed that club. And if you were that part of, Greece, you followed the other blue and white team or Croatian or whatever it was. So my dad was a huge patriot. We went there as supporters. Lucky enough, I played juniors, became a ball boy. From a ball boy, became a junior player. From junior into the youth team and then into the senior team. So, mate, it was a quintessential story, straight out of the grandstand into playing senior football. So still to today, as I'm getting older, there's nothing more emotional, more powerful than scoring a goal for your boyhood club. I can say that quite proudly.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's rare to see, I'm involved in junior coaching, and I see a bit of the merry-go-round. And so it's really nice to hear that story of somebody who stayed at a club and then progressed and then given that opportunity within that club. So maybe a touch point for those watching. But talk to me about like progressing through the Heidelberg ranks. What was it always? Was it just to have fun, or was it always to play seniors?
Oh, mate. Yeah, good question. Look, when I reflect on that sort of journey, Sasha, I can say that scoring goals always made a difference. And I even remember that. And that's some of the things we talk about when we talk to our players today, particularly if you're in that front third, you've got to make an impact. So scoring goals just endears you to everybody. So that's something I had as a sort of young player. But as I got older, it started to get a bit more serious about, okay, what's the pathway? What's the journey? And back then, it's not like today. The journey, the pathway wasn't clear. Kind of like, you had to make a choice whether you wanted to be a labourer or a corporate person or a footballer. Today, the dial's been turned. As you know, there's more chances of having a crack to be a footballer because you can make it, right? So, but what I do remember is there's quite a few more talented players than myself, always. But as they were getting older, they were falling off the wayside, and I couldn't work out why. But lucky enough, I got picked into the, might have been under 23s back in the day, reserves. And I got picked as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old to go and play in that. And that became the change for me. That's when it introduced me to senior football. Mm-hmm. And I pushed hard and got lucky. But even then, there was 2 or 3 players that didn't get picked that year, but I did. Mm. But people like Georgiadis, John Katsopoulos, and a few others that came back 2 years later with that sort of little kick in the teeth, came back stronger and harder. So that taught me another life lesson about young kids with talent. At some point, Sasha, it's the talent just gets you half, as we all know. The talent gets you sort of some way there, and the rest is about work rate. But for me, soccer became serious at about 16.
Okay. And were there any other like young boys that progressed through the ranks that you formed this, the brotherhood within Alexandros? Who are those guys where as you were sort of coming through?
Yeah, no, look, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And these are boys you still see today, and you've got this incredible bond with people like Andrew Vlahos, Georgiadis, I've said before. Even my goalkeeper coach currently, Costa Cara, he was another boy that played junior football with us. So here we are at the age of 40 as coaches working together. So honestly, mate, if I don't have 2 or 3 or 4 times a year, someone pulls you up at a restaurant or a cafe or somewhere that says, mate, Eckers, do you remember those days back in the under 12s, 13s, 14s? So, but yeah, Andrew Vlahos, Georgiadis, they're the ones that I would probably mainly call out. But yeah, mate, it's been an incredible journey, if I'm being honest, and we're very, very lucky to be able to play with some of these clubs, in my opinion. Yeah,
and so you think about maybe some of the glamour sides, your Marconis, your South Melbournes, who would just have a look at the Socceroo squad and say, okay, who's currently doing well, and every year they would go out and sign another Socceroo. So Heidelberg had a sort of needed to have a slightly different mentality. And so they needed to blood their own, right? And get a blend of experience and youth. So in the time that you were sort of coming into getting senior football, who were some of the older characters in that group?
Oh, great question, bud, because every club goes through a cycle, a sort of an evolution. And I'm old enough to remember the great Heidelberg teams, right? Jeff Olvers, when we had sort of whatever it was, 8, 9, 10 players represented, the national team when they were playing for Heidelberg. So I understood what it meant to be playing for that great club. The cycle that I was there was probably I wouldn't call it at its peak. It was sort of tapering off, but that meant it gave me an opportunity. So, as a youngster, if you come into a senior team that's struggling, it becomes even twice as hard. With some of my peers who went and played for South Melbourne around the same time, Steve Panopoulos, Billy Damianos, all these boys played at a massive club at a good era, and their careers propelled even further, way further than mine, obviously. So I do think about that dynamic. But the players that made a massive difference for me in terms of the ilk you're talking about, I mentioned earlier to you, we signed Paul Wade. I was very, very lucky when we signed Paul Wade from South Melbourne to Heidelberg. And funny enough, in my first year in the NSL, I was given the number 6 jersey, which I still have. And Paul came over as the new transfer. I think it was one of our trips over interstate, and he kind of pulled me aside and he said, "How are you, son? And, you know, look, I wouldn't normally do this, but I've always worn the number 6. Do you mind if I take the number 6 jersey?" And I was like, "Man, of course, son. It's yours. Take the jersey." Unbeknownst to both of us, under the regulations that year, once the number was registered to a player, you couldn't hand it over. Okay. So that's why I've still got the number 6. Okay. Because even though as much as I wanted to give it to him, he couldn't take it. So Paul Wade, Alan Scott, Richard Watson, I spent time playing with Jeff Olver at Faulkner, so they're the main ones that stand out for me. Some massive, massive players.
Yeah. So how good's that? Captain Socceroo, to teach you how to sort of hustle box to box. That's a good lesson, right? And
yeah,
no harder worker than Paul Wade, even in that time when he was let go at South Melbourne and obviously fortunately picked up by Heidelberg. He would have been a massive character in the dressing room. Oh,
huge, mate, huge. And he was the first real sort of star that I played with that, come from a much better, and it just taught me the essence of being humble and being a great teammate and all that sort of stuff. And I still have visions of him, but mate, even as a youngster at Heidelberg, I didn't play a lot of football with them, but people like Phil Stubbins, Andy O'Dell, every one of those boys, Gary McDowell, talking about people that taught you something about the game in a pragmatic sense. And Sasha, if I've got one message not one message, I think when I reflect on my coaching versus my playing, those boys taught me the essence of winning, and that's what we're trying to impart on it. And I see the same fire and passion in you when you talk football. It's the practicalities, it's the kicking, it's the scratching, it's doing everything to win. It's not just about a good first touch or whatever it might be. It's how do you influence the referee? How do you influence a red card? Whatever it might be. That's just bloody win in every way possible. So that old sort of British mentality taught me the essence of winning, and that's something that I think I've still got. Even in over 35, just want to bloody win. And Paul was massive in that. He was a winner, mate. He was just a winner.
Yeah. So what a great guy, and still a great steward of Australian football.
Absolutely.
First senior game. Do you remember it? Did you come off the bench? Did you start?
100% remember it. Gary Cole was the coach.
Mm-hmm. Another great Socceroo, Gary.
Massive. I love Gary Cole. He's another amazing human being, amazing personality. But yeah, so he gave me my first senior game, and I can't remember the competition. Would have been like a Doherty Cup equivalent. Mm-hmm. It was us versus Heidelberg versus Brunswick Juventus at Olympic Park.
Quality.
It might have been a double header, like us, and then maybe, I don't know, like a Preston Knights after that or something. And I've come on, and the two things I remember. One, I came on and there was a throw-in, and I was receiving the throw-in, and I gave Andrew Zinni a little elbow just to try and get half a yard, and he's come back and he's literally just hooked me across the face. Who's this little punk? So I'll never forget. I still see Andrew, but he doesn't remember that, right? Because I'm trying to sign his son every year these days. So he absolutely hooked me. And then the other thing I tried to do is halfway through my, 15 minutes, I went to nutmeg a player, and obviously it was unsuccessful. And Gary Cole, after the game, sort of put his arm around me and said, "Son, just relax with the nutmegs. Just take it easy."
Yeah.
But in a really nice way, really sort of,
I think, that to me, that shows ambition when a player's trying to nutmeg another player and a top level.
I think his point was wrong time, wrong part of the park, wrong moment.
Yeah. Look, I quite like it. It's quite cheeky. First game. Why not? What year are we talking about now? Now,
95, I reckon. No, yeah, I reckon 95, around there, maybe even earlier. Early 90s, early to mid 90s. I think I should have done some research, Sash, but I kind of move on. It's the year that ended up because the two major things I remember that year was that I played for Heidelberg and we did extremely well in the Johnny Walker Cup, and we made the final that year.
Okay, yes.
In the Johnny Walker Cup, yes. And I started at Olympic Park. Spiteri, Viduka, Biskic, all these guys played for Melbourne Knights. We were flying up until then. We lost 6-0 in the final.
Okay.
So I think that would have been 93, 94. And we thought, okay, that's fine. That's a blimp. And then the week after, we played South Melbourne in the last ever game at Middle Park in front of 14,000 people.
Yes, I was at that game.
So I started that game as well. And I still have a massive regret there. I sort of had an easy chance to score to go 1-0, but I miskicked it. It's fallen to, I think, Peter Salakis, and he's tried to hit the roof of the net, and Jason Pollock handballed it. So they went down to 10 men. We scored the penalty. We ended up losing 4-1, and they had 10 men. Yeah. So that was in front of 14,000 people. So, and the year kind of ebbed and flowed that year. Yes. But that was my first year. I was like, this was crazy. This was the best thing ever.
And did Heidelberg have the opportunity to fly a day before? And did you get an opportunity room, or was it fly in, fly out at those days?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, look, Michael Uricalo is the first true coach that taught me the essence of giving a youngster a true opportunity, right? Because Gary Cole left that year. So the year after, Michael Uricalo took it, who's someone I just owe the world to. And when I've often given young players an opportunity, I remember what it feels like to be a youngster and how important that is. So, but yeah, we did, but that was the best part of traveling. And in fact, I met a guy called Peter Papithus, who's still a very close friend of mine.
Yes, Sydney Side. Yeah.
He's currently in the World Cup doing some anyway, legend of a bloke. And when we travel, he was Sydney-based, but he played for Heidelberg. So every time we went to Sydney, Pete would just hook us up with all the right places. And boy, did he open up my world to Sydney. So, yes, we did. David Miller is another guy that I played with. And when we used to travel interstate, he was an interesting cat. So it's funny, every single goalkeeper I know, bud, a bit left to centre. But I love them all.
Yes, the goalkeepers are a class of their own. So there's sometimes the games everybody gets to see, but it's the training and the travel, and that's what football life is about, isn't it? So
yeah, it's the best.
And so was your room the messy room, the loud room, or quiet? What was your room like?
I was just a conservative, quiet little Greek boy, mate.
Yes,
no chance. I was going to uni. But I was taking it all in, let me assure you.
Okay, good stuff. And so you played so in that time at Heidelberg, I'm trying to recall now, so was there a year that we dropped out of the National League and you played State League? So is that right?
Yeah. I vaguely remember it as well, but I think it might be around the time. I think Heidelberg got relegated that year, but it might be around the time when the A-League the NSL was disbanded. So there was this period of just sort of uncertainty. There was no National League, and then I think that led to the start of the A-League. I can't quite recall, but yeah, we got relegated. Things kind of went a bit pear-shaped in domestic football, but I ended up moving to and Heidelberg, God bless them. There's so many people that have made such a massive effort to keep the club where it's at and put it in a position now where it's flying, right? So that's great. But at the time, it was a little bit of a challenge. And I ended up going to play for Faulkner and work with Tony Brezina, Ken Murphy. So that gave me an interesting experience to get away from the club. And that allowed me to play games against Heidelberg, which I found very weird. And strangely enough, it got the best out of me. So that's another thing as coaches you and I need to think about the sort of the mental side of the game and the motivation. And, when you're coming up against players that you used to coach or you used to play for your club, some of them just bring a bigger essence. And I always did well when I played against Heidelberg, which I couldn't work out why that was the case. But yeah, I did. It's sort of the league effectively disbanded, and then as you know, Heidelberg and South are still trying to get back into the top division again.
Yeah. I mean, but both very strong clubs now, and good luck to their journeys. So talk to me about. Maybe you think back and you say, okay, if I can relieve that moment, you talk about now, you play over 35s, you get that ball and you try and ping it from, 30 yards. Tell me about maybe there was a time, a moment where you had the ball in your feet and you've hit the ball and it's just gone sweetly. And I say, if I can just relive that moment in every Training. So where does the mind go back to?
That's an amazing question. You can tell you've played the game, because if you're trying to picture that, it's try and explain that feeling to somebody that hasn't played the game is virtually impossible. But for me, it's overwhelming. It's vivid. It's clear. Phil Stubbins was the coach. He was really under a lot of pressure. There was a lot of expectation with Phil, and Phil was just a consummate professional, meticulous with his planning. But sometimes in coaching, it just doesn't go right, it doesn't go for you. So we're playing away to Preston. And, I don't have to explain to you the rivalry, both on and off the park, between Heidelberg and Preston.
Yes.
And it was at a time where a lot of the Heidelberg supporters were advised not to come to the away ground. But there was a core group of Heidelberg supporters that just did. Yes. And they went and stood in behind the far goal. So not towards the entry, towards the far goal. So we're playing Preston, and I was playing right back.
That's not always the wisest decision. It's probably easier staying in the near side of the goal so you can exit. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure they did their due diligence on the exit strategy. Okay. So I don't even know if they got out safe, if I'm being honest today. That's a good question. Good point.
I remember once, and sorry to deviate from your story, but being at a South Preston game and being one of 200 South supporters until in sort of mid-90s, and with that led to slight trouble at the game where
I think it might be on the internet, that stuff.
Yes, it is. I was in the middle, young boy at that time, so so very, very passionate supporters. So I understand the heat of this game, right? So
the heat's flying. Yep. There's thousands of people there. There's the political overlay. Then there's Phil Stubbins overlay, and we loved Phil, but we just knew if he lost that game, it was done.
Okay.
Subsequently, he got sacked, I think, a couple of weeks after anyway. But anyway, the game's on. I'm playing right back, and I think I was the captain. Doesn't matter, not important. Anyway, I remember one of the midfielders was sort of building up. So all 11 players are in the Preston attacking half. Sorry, our attacking half, so Preston's defensive half. I've received it as the right back off the midfield as he switched it across. I've just taken a touch away from my right foot, and I've hit it from about 5 metres inside the halfway line.
Oh.
Don't ask. I've still got the photo, and Channel 31 recorded it, but I can't get the video.
Okay.
This thing has just gone whooshka, far post, top corner.
Oh.
And the Heidelberg supporters lost there. And I've just turned to the grandstand and give it a bit of whatever. Thought that was pretty cool. 1-1, 91st minute.
Oh.
Billy D. Now, it's now 1-1, 91st minute. Billy Damianos gets the ball in our box, but right on the edge near the corner flag. He does one of these little flick dummies, puts it through the boy's legs, gets dragged down, penalty.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, shit, come on, Billy. He gets the ball and just throws it at me.
Oh, wow. No.
I go, come on, Billy. He goes, Eckers, I can't. I go, all right. Okay, so I just put it down and close my eyes.
I feel the tension now.
Yeah, I just closed my eyes. Obviously went in 2-1. And I remember Tommy Karapatsos, who's another boy that had immense talent, a hugely patriotic Greek player, in tears after the game, just hugged me and he just said, Eckers, that must be the proudest moment of your life.
Yes.
Like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I was, put it this way, I was a legend within my family community for a while. My dad was pretty happy.
Yes, of course. So that, and like Preston would have always had sort of that 3,000 to 5,000, 6,000 supporters at that base. So you can imagine 3,000 to 5,000 very passionate Preston supporters, the 200 Heidelberg supporters, the red and black and the yellow and black, right? 2-1. Yeah, I'd take that.
You know what it's like after the game. As much as it's a team game, I was just very lucky that day where it became very much about, and just get the pats on the head and the hugs, and it's immeasurable.
And that's what football's about. It's about those moments, right? And you think about, all the sort of, talk about Heidelberg, right? So committee turmoil and flipping of coaches and, this person's going out and this going in and not getting paid one week. And you take that game and that outweighs it all, right? And so today you can say, I love Heidelberg. That's brilliant. Great story. Great story.
Beautiful.
So, and when did you, because you can still play. Like, I think like if you wanted to, you could probably play, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe if there's a state 4, if you ever get the sack from George
State
Cox.
5, 6.
State 4, state 5, last 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Players
are swept with 2 centre backs. Yep. I'm hearing that.
You can do a job. So, and you've kept fit. But if you think about like as you went on to retire, because you played for Heidelberg again, in the Estate League, and I think you went on to were you at Port at some stage as well? Yeah, okay. So my memory does serve me correctly. So when did you last hang up the boots, per se, where you say, I'm done, and how old were you?
I think I'm going to scratch the surface there a little bit. You're right. Heidelberg became a bit tiring for me in the end. It became, as a club captain, as a Greek boy, as a young lad, a lot of responsibility fell on me. And the club was doing its absolute best at the time, but it was still hard. So an opportunity came about through Tim Payton, who's Jamie Payton's son. So Jamie being a Socceroo and a legend of the game. Tim would move to Port Melbourne, and they were in State 2. So it was VPL State 1, State 2, so effectively 3rd division. And said, Eckers, you should have a chat to the club here. They're potentially looking for a coach. I said, okay. Cut a long story short, I met a guy called Dennis Apantis, and Nicky Apantis, the president, his wife, and Nick Tavanlis, who was on the board there. And they said, Eckers, we're interested in a new project. We're interested in a bit of a rebirth of the club. Are you keen? I said, well, all right, I'm going to keep playing. So I grabbed a good mate of mine, Peter Taffy Roberts, who was my right back at Heidelberg. I said, Taff, let's go across. I'll be the coach. You come and help me as my assistant. We can both keep playing. And yes, at about 33, I left the VPL and went and played State 2. So it's like someone going now from MPL 1 to State 1 for us, right? Huge signings at the time in terms of just the gap. And that's it, bud. And then from there, I played. We got promoted in the first year.
Oh, how good's that? Nice project, huh?
Then in the second year in States, so in State 1, we missed out on promotion by 4 goals. And Southern Star scored a goal in the last 95th minute of round 22 for us to not get promoted. So that was incredibly hard. But then we got promoted the year after, into the VPL, and that's when I said, all right, I'm out. There's no way I can keep playing VPL.
What age is this? So this is your 3rd year.
I'm 30. I reckon I'm 35 here.
Okay, all right. Well, that's
So I picked a young boy called Peter Sarwan, who plays now for I think more than Zebras. He was a little young punk coming through. Great kid, great player. But I sort of, as I was coming off, as I was bringing myself off, I was bringing him on. And then eventually I thought it's time for him now to start. So I just skedaddled. But I reckon I could have played, Sash. I reckon I could have played another couple of years.
Yeah, okay, of course, mate. I've seen you in the middle of the park, mate. So you're still good. Do you still jump in and play a little bit of Sheva with the seniors, or you?
I'm taking the piss, honestly. I still take the piss with the Sheva. I never go in though, because that's the rule.
No, coaches don't go in.
Yeah, no.
Coaches don't go in.
Mate, how could you turn up to our ground at George Cross with those balls, that ground, those lights, and not get involved?
Sheva,
impossible.
Coach of Sheva. So we talk about, and you've coached throughout the state. State NPL divisions. You pretty much coached now for the last decade plus, and had a lot of success at a lot of different clubs. You've been, if you think of all the years that you've coached and the amount of promotions or close promotions that you've had, right? You've been very, very successful. What do you think, if you had to boil it down to 2 or 3 main things, what has been the overarching success in your coaching career?
I think the overarching success for me is picking the right project. You know, sometimes you need a little bit of luck, but as a coach, you need to formulate a plan that's going to bring you success with the dynamic that you're dealing with. So it's like you've got to put all these inputs into a model and say, okay, based on all the inputs, how am I going to manage this to get the best out of it? So what I mean by that is in my opinion, you can't go into it with one same formula. Different boards, different players, different systems, different ground, different leagues, a bunch of different things. So I think my desire to be analytical and formulate a plan to deliver success based on what I've got is kind of what I feel holds me in good stead. But I've also made some errors of judgment as a coach when I've picked certain jobs. But I will never regret taking a leap of faith. I will never regret taking a chance. So I took a chance, for example, at Melbourne Knights. I thought, you know what, too big a project. If I get it right, it's going to be immense. If I get it wrong, so be it. So in the end, I think, the project, I'm at a point now, I was just lucky. I was lucky to be that we won championships early as coaches, and that just, your stocks go up and other doors open. Whereas a lot of coaches don't get that chance. You've got to knock down a lot of doors to get a really good chance at a good club.
It's interesting because everybody every club wants success, right? So that's no club goes out there start a year say, oh, we're going to get relegated this year, right? And the unfortunate thing, doesn't matter if you state 5 or NPL 1, right? Somebody on that list is getting relegated, and so, you know, as coaches, we look for these jobs that we think we're suited for, and there's a pecking order, like players is a pecking order, and so
that's right.
You've got to know your spot, and maybe you're that coach who's going to survive relegation, right? So so that's interesting that you touch on that. And so, would you say that at least half of the job is done before a single ball is kicked of a season, like the back office staff, relationship with board, signing of players, allocation of budget, you know, making sure you spend the money in the right areas? Would you say half of the work is there and then half of the work's on the pitch?
I don't know if I'd break it down to half and half, but because you obviously can't have one without the other, but there's no doubt the most important bit is the setup. It's like the foundation, building a house, foundation. You know, if you build a house and the foundation's right, it might stand there looking good for a while, but eventually it's going to come crumbling down. So, absolutely. But you touched on something there about relationship with the board. For me, that is by far the most important. And you get to a point in your coaching career where you know where the balance of power is. So Rafa Benitez used to say, he coached Liverpool, he coached Real Madrid. When he coached Liverpool, it was his team. When he coached Real Madrid, it was their team. He just had to coach those players. So you need to understand early, where do you sit? Where do you sit in the lay of the land? Like, does the board need you or do you need the board? And then it becomes a relationship. So at some point, if you've got a good relationship with the board, they value the work, not necessarily the result. And that can give you longevity.
Great insight for those coaching. And so you won promotion this year at George Cross for, you know, fantastic team. I get the opportunity to see you train, like I hang around, you know, for 20, 30 minutes of a weekend, probably every second or third week. You're going to play back in NPL 3 football. What's your goals for the next 12 months?
The goal for us as a club has not shifted. And that is from the day that we joined, it was to try and get the club back to the top echelons of Victorian football. And obviously there's a separate project going on around National Second Division and that sort of stuff. So the club's aspirational on that front. And Mark and the board are doing an incredible job. So the aspiration for us is to get to the upper echelons. What's not clear for us at the moment is it's not like they've said to me, because you must do it within 2 years or 3 years, whatever the number is. Our job is to maximize everything we've got at our disposal to try and deliver success. And that means we want to get promoted this year and get to NPL2. If we get to NPL2, then all of a sudden the dynamics shift again. More players want to come, more sponsors want to come, more people want to come. And before you know it, you go again. So we're an aspirational club. And you can't be at our club, Sasha, as you know, with that sort of history, with that sort of expectation, without being aspirational. The days of the old George Cross at Chaplin are gone. We respect it. We love it. That makes us stronger. But it just makes us appreciate even more now what we've got. So we're going to go hard, buddy, but we're not sure where it's going to end up, but we're definitely not setting limits.
So, but you're you know, so the goal is pedal to the metal, work hard, and hopefully the results card.
No, we will run at 100 kilometers an hour at all points.
Oh, good. Well, good luck. Good luck for the season 2023, and wish you all the success. I mean, you think about what we're so fortunate. I remember speaking to a professional footballer in Uruguay, and he said, you know, there are first division clubs in Uruguay that don't have the facilities that Caroline Springs George Cross have. So we're like, the resources, change rooms, ice baths, synthetic pitches, grass pitches that's like Olympic quality. And I can see why Western United women would want to train on that pitch. It's gorgeous. So it must be good coming to work, right?
Obviously, it is. But what I'm super proud of, mate, is what Mark and that board have done is they haven't rested on their laurels. They haven't just said, we've got this stadium and we've achieved. Mate, they have pioneered so much stuff that I haven't seen in the game. We're talking about full-time general managers, full-time technical directors. This full-time concept's now coming to the fore. Mark and the board were doing this 3-4 years ago, right? So, and the program that John Flores is running down there with Lisa and the board is just, and Darcy and a few of the others, is because we're in it, we don't appreciate it. But if you think back where we were 4 years ago, the change has been immense. And the challenge is you can't make that sort of change with a little bit of agitation and disruption and pissing a few people off along the way, which is a shame because we want everybody to come along for the journey. But I'm super proud of what the club is continuing to do to just keep getting better.
Yeah, here. Cheers to the George Cross board and all those involved. So now you touched on this throughout the interview, giving young players a chance. You're now speaking to that 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 year old, and they're looking to make that transition, whatever level they're at, from, reserve football or youth football into the first team. And you get that opportunity on a, yearly basis. There's a new bunch of boys that comes through at the teams that you're at. What advice can you give them so they make that transition?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question, Sasha, and one we've probably all got a different answer to. My experience as a player, and I've got that additional element because I can turn the dial as a coach now. So I'm not just some dude sort of saying, you should do this. I'm merely saying to them, this is, when I look back versus, I can also sort of say, yes, I've opened the door. My advice to them is, do you truly, so this is a conversation now. So this is not even advice. This is a two-way conversation. Tell me about your life. Tell me about your priorities. Tell me about what you want to achieve. Tell me about what's important to you. Tell me about what success looks like to you today, in 3 months, in 6 months, in 12 months. And look at me in the eye. Do you truly, truly believe that is what you want to do? Yes? Yes. Okay. For you to achieve that, got to do the work. And then it's a deeper conversation, right? Let's plug him into the experts, the S&C, the planners, to make sure they go and do the work. Ultimately, they've just got to do the work and come back physically stronger, mentally determined, and then they've just got to be good human beings when they get to training. Because at the end of the day, every coach is a human being. He's not going to want to help some young punk. So if they're good human beings, they've done the work. If they've done the work, life will have no option but to look after them. Because if you've done the work, when there's a 50-50 challenge and it's just a split second, because you've done the work, you're physically stronger, you're going to get there sooner. You've tucked it into the side corner, right? So, yeah. So my advice is, let's have a conversation, understand what is your goal. Let's own it and let's go and do the work to get there. And look, mate, I don't know about you. Did you ever play in the rep sides and that sort of stuff? A lot of kids get disillusioned these days because they're getting spat out of the A-League system. That's a furphy. I mean, that's a joke. I mean, they're better than that and they can go harder. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's easy for us to be nostalgic, to say, this is the better way. But we need to look at, if we're going to take a lens of critique, players think they have made it, but now, and we've got an NPL program, and I coached at George Cross at the 17s before they were 18s, and I was speaking to a player at George Cross, and I said, what's next year for you? And the response was A-League. And I said, at what level? And he said, seniors. So he thought that the progression from 17s at the year was A-League. And I said, remember when we played our reserve side? Okay, he goes, yes. and we lost 3-0 and we didn't touch the ball, you've got a 30% jump to get into the George Cross reserves.
Yeah.
So there's an element of disillusion now.
Yeah, misconception or almost naivety, ignorance.
Exactly. And so I said, have you ever spoken to an A-League player? Have you ever had coffee with them to understand what their world lives? They said, no. How would I do that? I said, look, there's five numbers in my phone. Like, all these guys are great guys, and they'll happily walk you through, but they all take their role serious. And the truth is, to every youth player, from my aspect, it doesn't matter. I'm now helping back at Suburbs, right? State 2. We almost got relegated. There's senior boys there. That want to play, right? If you're a young boy, for me, you've got to then go and take somebody's spot.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to give it to you.
Yes.
So, like you've got to take it. Yeah. So you'll have opportunities to blossom and show yourself. And I don't think it's one chance, but at the end of the day, you've got to take it yourself. And I think the ones, if I look back at the players who get the opportunity, yes, the framework's there, but they've taken it. It's them that have.
But you've got to break down that concept. In my opinion, you're right, 100%. You've got to break down that concept into even more detail. How do you take it? Okay, coach, how do I take it? Well, okay. Let's start having a conversation about what the actions, the behaviors, the sacrifices that you have to make to be able to take it. Because some 29, 32, 34-year-old seasoned campaigner who's getting $200, $300, $400 a week, he's not going to hand it to you.
No, yeah. And you're in the thick of it. Fantastic words of wisdom. Ekers, how easy does the hour fly past? Thank you so much for your contribution to Australian football. You've taken us back down memory lane, and all the very best to your continued contribution to Victorian football.
Nah, thank you, Sasha. I really appreciate your support, mate. Well done with the program, and it's definitely been my honour.
Hey, guys. We've come to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to our wonderful guest. If you like this type of content and would like to see more, how about you hit the like and subscribe button? And have a fantastic day.